anyways, I'll put my finger here again. We'll show you about this here, and then how we would tunk them and get them out so they wouldn't warp.
So you'd use a ball peen hammer there to hammer the blade out.
Yeah, the ball peen hammer, and you just touch them. You didn't take much to get that spring out of there. Is what had happened. It sprung, and you get that spring out of there. And then of course there's your gullet, and then of course we just wedge that tooth, just widen out that tooth a little bit, and then we sharpen it off with a file all the way down through there. You're going back quite a few years, my friend, to pick this stuff up. But it's amazing that this thing is still here. I gotta tell you this story about my jacket. Want me to put that on there?
Sure.
You got time on there?
I've got plenty of time on here.
I left here 1956, November. Went in the Army. When I left here, I had a denim jacket. I hung up behind the boiler. Get it dried out. I got over to the park on the Quaker side, and Mom said, "Where's your jacket?" I told her, I said, "Well, it's hanging up over the shop, over the sawmill." And Dad said, "Well, I'll go get it for you." Well, I went in the Army the next day, and I came back out, and I think it was 1992 or 1993, somewhere along in there. I had a chance to come back over here to the mill. And that jacket was still hanging there on the same hook. It was kind of rough. It was kind of rough.
Imagine so.
Then my job here was on the PV, on the train, bringing the logs in from the pond, and nothing else was going on. I'd be down here at the slash saw, cutting off the ends, and of course that wood went back into the boiler. It certainly is a wonderful piece of history to preserve this. It just is. And I can't even gonna tell you how many Remingtons have worked in this mill.
Yeah.
I mean,
So your dad.
Bob Remington, Elwood Remington, Jason Remington, DeForest Remington. There's two Bob Remingtons, my dad and my brother, Paul Remington. It just seems so that you can feel these people in here. You can feel the sweat and the work. The walls just radiate, well, not ghosts, but they radiate personality of the building.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir, and I
What more can we
appreciate
talk
that.
about?
Well, let's talk about your dad.
Dad?
Yeah, let's go back to the boiler. The story of the boiler. You're telling me about he salvaged that boiler. It was a 1918, I think. It was a World War I surplus boiler, and he salvaged it and worked on it over in Quaker.
The only thing I have recollection is that my dad told me that he got the boiler out of a field. It was a World War I boiler, whether or not just the date of the boiler, or whether it came out of maybe the Navy or the Army or what, I don't know. But he took it out, he brought it back down on the Quaker side of the park. It was the maintenance building. And then he repaired it, he got it back in shape. And then he took it over to the sawmill that was on Stoddard. And as far as I know, he got it in there, he got it working, that was fine. And then they gave up on that mill because actually it ran out of local lumber over there. Now that's back in the days when you took the sawmill to the woods. Now you take the wood to the sawmill.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference.
Sure.
So back then they had one truck, a log truck, for dragging the logs around, and a couple of dozers, but it was more efficient to build a bigger unit with a bigger pond and the chain and the whole shot. So they came over here and they brought the boiler over here. Now this was about 1946, 47. They started this building over here. Now I'm going back a few years again, but he began interested in the steam industry. Well, before he came to the park in 1922, he worked for the railroad as a fireman. And before that, his father ran a steam boiler over in, I think, Cottage, South Dayton, somewhere over in there. They processed grapes, fruit, or whatever, and the boiler blew up. and it's 1907. And of course, it cooked him. Now, he was the same gentleman that lost his hand down here in Red House on a train accident when they was doing the lumber work.
This was before the park was in existence, is that correct?
Yeah, before the park was in existence. So Remingtons have been in the lumber industry for quite a few years. Now, Glenn Remington, the one that was killed in the boiler and lost his hand, he had a team of oxen. He worked out of South Dayton. And at that time, he worked as a private contractor, which I think most people did anyways. But he went around to the different farms and he hauled lumber, hauled the logs to the sawmill. And before that, there's another Remington that bought and sold timber. So it goes on quite a ways. I got into it a little bit. I worked at Green Brothers over in Asheville, sharpening saws, but they had big band saws. And I did that for quite a while on call. They'd call me up and tell me they had 4 or 5 saws they could sharpen, so I'd go over and do that for them. Saw sharpening is a trade that died out. They just don't do this stuff anymore. You know, so I can't tell you too much more, Paul. I mean, other than the fact that it's a wonderful experience to come over here.
Well,
It just is.
can I ask, sir, I understand Bennett Wheeler Jr. Was trained by your father, Bob Remington, and he told me that your father was the brains behind this operation. When they put this thing together, he said he had a lot to do with the layout, you know, the engineering of the mill. And you were saying earlier, it's just, there was no blueprint for it, they just did it.
Well, you go through this and you can see where you can call it hodgepodge, you can call it redneck engineering, you can call it what you want. I felt personally that Kings Row, you're familiar with Kings Row.
I am. Mm-hmm.
I was familiar with Kings Row being part of it as far as a blueprint's concerned, designing the foundations and this, and maybe they were, I don't know, but I've never seen a blueprint of the place. It wouldn't take an awful lot though to figure out what kind of a foundation you needed, because this is basically nothing but a pole barn, really.
Sure.
I mean, basically, with the foundations for the mill and for the engine.
There's a lot of weight in this building, though. I mean, there's a heck of a lot of beams and footers, and a very thick. The perimeter of the foundation is quite thick, mostly poured foundation in that.
It was really, in the fall of the year, we'd come over here and start the mill up. And we always prayed that it wouldn't freeze, because at that pond, if that ice got on top of those logs, even though your pond was warm, the steam coming off would condense on the logs, and it would freeze. And when you walked on those logs, you'd be kind of careful, or you'd be all wet. And we kind of hated that.
Yeah.
You know? But the mill was always hot. You get in the mill and it'd be hot, and it was in the fall of the year and early winter, and it felt good to work here because it was so warm. And I'd either work here or else work in the woods, cutting the logs. And I didn't. Somebody else can do that, believe me.
Yeah. Can I ask, David, were you born in the park?
I was born in Salamanca.
Okay.
I was raised in the park on the Quaker side. Born in 1936, but I was raised in the Quaker side of the park on the first house there on the corner of ASP 1, ASP 3.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, my goal is about 5 years from now, 6 years from now, they'll have a 2021 anniversary of the park, the 100th year anniversary. And my goal is to be down there when I'll be, 85, 86 years old. And I want to be there, and I'm going to tell New York State what I think about their park. They took out the picnic grounds, they took out the pool, they took out the dance hall. I go on and on and on.
I got to tell you, David, this is, luckily we can edit things, but you done went on about stuff, and everybody had had an opinion, that's for sure. But
the storm windows before when I worked there.
I'm sorry.
Wasn't any storm windows.
Oh, there's just shutters and then windows. So they had just shutters and no windows on it. Oh, very good. Now, sir, you
Well,
worked.
they had windows, but they weren't these windows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look maybe a little newer. Can I ask, now, you worked in the park as well, correct?
Well, my dad, being the gentleman that he was, and being a good father, he got me started in the park. I was picking up papers alongside the road. And at that time, the rangers had charge of sanitation. Okay. So I was picking up papers alongside the road. Well, then the following summer, my dad thought I should have something a little more interesting. So Paul Remington, he ran the Honey Dipper. Big tank truck,
Okay.
about 4-inch suction holes, with a screen on the end of it. Well, he drove the truck. All he did. Take off the back of the outhouse, put the hose down in, start the engine. If I go explain myself.
I think
I
it's
get home at night,
quite
my
clear.
mother would take me right down cellar, take off your clothes, put on different clothes, come back up. Every night, the same thing, until we had the job done.
Yeah.
Okay, from there, I went to running roller. I did a little bulldozer work. And I gotta tell you a story about the blacktop spreader. We'd hired a blacktop spreader to do some work on top of Red House Hill. And we hired the spreader and the operator as a unit. We supplied the blacktop. Elwood Remington, his name was Woody. He said, ain't no man worth $12 an hour.
What year was that, sir?
That was the machine and the operator, $12 an hour.
Oh, no kidding. And what year was that, David?
Well, you gotta be talking late 40s, early 50s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elwood Remington was the same one that fell in the concrete forms up there in Science Lake.
Oh, I've heard that story. That's a fascinating story. They dug them out, they had to break the forms?
They broke the forms, they dug them out, and he sent them home. Now, Cy Remington, now he's got a plaque down Red House in the administration building, Cy Remington. Cy Remington was a boss on the job. So he sent him home, get cleaned up. He came back to work the next day, still had concrete in his ears, nose, whatever. And a little time went on, and the paychecks came around, and he got back to half a day.
So he lost his life falling into the wet cement in Science Lake Dam. They had to break the forms open to rescue him,
Yep.
and they docked him a half day's pay because they sent him home afterwards.
Yep, he wasn't there to work.
And that was his uncle that docked the pay.
That would be probably my second uncle.
Yeah, but his uncle at the time.
Pardon me?
His uncle at the time, though.
Yeah.
Okay. And what years were those? The 20s? 1920s? 30s?
Science Lake was built around 26, 27,
Very good.
I believe.
First lake in the park, maybe?
Yeah. Now, Cy Remington had a place in the park. He lived here in the park, and he had a cottage up on, I think, Coon Trail.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the last cabin on the left going up the hill on Coon Trail. And he also had a farm over in Vandalia. So he went back and forth. But he knew the quicker side of the park. And he knew the lumbering industry. He did a lot of lumbering work while he was here. So when they started the park, he was picked to be the superintendent because he knew all the roads, he knew all the springs, he knew where everything was.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was a lumbering concern years ago
Sure.
in the Frex corner of Frex Mill.
Between the railroads and lumber mills, things of that nature, way
Number two,
pre-park days.
Number 2 Dow was the office for Frex Lumber Company. Number 2 Dow, that's the cabin.
Okay.
That was also my first school.
Number 2, Dowd.
Number 2.
Okay. Dowd was demolished around 15 years ago. That's on the road down to Bee Hunter. In fact, me and my sons and wife at the time had stayed there just before they demolished it.
Not Dow, I'm sorry.
How about Brow?
Brow.
Okay. How about Brow 11? Was that the schoolhouse? It has a masonry chimney in it.
number 11, bro?
I'm trying to think where 2
I think it
is.
was number 2. Well, it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's right across from where they used to store the logs. Used to be a log pond over there
Oh,
years ago. When you go down Broad Trail now, you can see a pile of logs on the right-hand side across from the cabin. You used to anyways. That used to be a log pond. And back in the 1920s, that was a swimming hole.
very good.
Whatever. Am I,
Well, back to, not at all. No, this is fascinating stuff. We're getting more than the lumber mill here, but thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I tell you, to see the look, the joy in the faces, even the guys that didn't have the best time of their life working in the park and all that stuff, everyone comes to life during these interviews, and they're just, they're so happy to see the thing, happening, so, as am I, so.
I think that working in the park, living here was wonderful, but the cold, long winters overshadow a lot of the good. Because after all, my closest neighbor was 12 miles away.
Yeah.
There wasn't any street lights, but we had beautiful stars. We had Milky Way, shooting stars. I mean, it was beautiful, but it was a long walk to Bradford, 12 miles, to go to a movie. And we'd walk over there Saturday, leave for about 2 o'clock, walk to Bradford, see a movie, walk home.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's ambitious.
Okay,
Now, back a little bit more to your dad. So how long did you work in the park for, sir?
well, probably summer of 1950, 49, 50, up until about 56, probably 6, 7 years though.
Okay, and what were your duties when you worked at the mill here?
Pardon me?
What were your duties when you worked at the sawmill here? Did you work at the sawmill here?
Yeah,
Okay, and what did you do? What were your duties here at the sawmill when you worked here?
and the sawmill, I helped PV the logs from the pond up to the carriage.
Okay, and this is the carriage
Okay.
right here.
We bring the logs up to the, then we go from here over to the carriage down to the saw. Now,
You have any stories about that? Anyone fall into the log pond, anything like that?
no, there isn't any stories about that, other than the fact that it's cold. But I can remember my dad, seems to me, he had a seat, and he sat here. And he run this thing back and forth. And this is how you would change your logs to go from one side to the other side so you could square them up. And there was a scale. You could read the scale on the side here. But I don't see that anymore. That's okay.
And what were your dad's duties here at the mill?
Pardon me?
And what were your father's duties here at the mill?
What time did he come to the mill?
What did your father do with the mill here? Was
He ran the dam. He ran it.
Chief Sawyer or head Sawyer?
Everything, yeah.
Yeah,
Steam operator, head sawyer. Oh, yeah.
very good. I understand, like I said, I was talking to Bennett Wheeler Jr., and he said he taught him everything he knew. Sharpening the teeth, hammering the blade, running, being the head sawyer, basically. And he said he was a great man,
Well, the thing was, and my dad was a great believer that if you know how to do something, figure it out. I mean, there wasn't any place to go run and ask somebody.
I imagine not.
There wasn't any Google.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had to figure something out, you figured it out. So I was to it.
Very good.
A lot of the knowledge came from Ab Fancher. Now, Ab Fancher had a Fancher furniture factory. Ab Fancher bought a lot of logs. And so it went all hand in hand. And the reason my dad got a job down here in the state park was because of Ab Fancher. The Fancher used to race cars years ago. My dad was a mechanic for the Buick garage in Salamanca. He was also a part-time mechanic for Fancher. Fancher got the idea of starting up a park. Fancher figured out he had to have a mechanic. So my dad wound up being down here as a mechanic for the park. From there, it just progressed to whatever had to be done. You know.
So was that ultimately Senator Fancher?
Yeah.
Albert Fancher.
Senator and Albert were both the same.
Very good.
Oh yeah.
The founder of the park, 1921, I believe. Started in the Frex area of Quaker.
Well, the park started in 21. The dedication to the park was in 1921. It's in July of 21. And my dad was down here in 21, but he didn't come to work formally for the park until 1922. Okay. At that time, they had a cabin down on the bottom of between Pine Tree and Ranger. Just about maybe 20 feet off the road, between Pine Tree and Ranger. You can still find some of the old foundations down in there. But he stayed there, and I got photographs of my mom and my grandmother in the summertime on that cabin. And he stayed in that cabin until they built the house on ASP1, ASP3. Which I think was around the mid-20s, I think. They built that house. Well, whatever.
No, that's
A lot of stories. I mean, you can talk like this forever. That's what they made pork barrels. I could talk forever, you know.
No, what you covered, I did not realize your association with the park founder and your father's association with the park founder, and that your father was ultimately one of the first employees in the park. And when did your dad retire?
My dad was the longest continuous employee. I think he spent 48 years down here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But there was other people who had been in the park longer, but not continuous. They've been laid off or whatever and come back to work. But he was the longest continuous employed.
I'm speaking with David Remington here, who was born in Salamanca and raised in the park by his father, Bob Remington, someone who had much to do with you might even call him the founder of the sawmill here. Back in the original days of the sawmill in Stoddard Creek, he brought the boiler over and got this whole thing started. So, and as you've heard here, many Remingtons have worked in the park. And we're lucky here to have David today live explaining what he's done here in the park, worked in the park, his job in the sawmill, and the history of his father and partially of his family. So thank you very much, sir.